Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to yet another episode of Luminary Lounge. Today on Luminary Lounge, we have the honor of hosting a soldier, a scholar, and a statesman. Lieutenant General Pradeep Chandran Nair, a distinguished veteran of the Indian Army who has served the nation for nearly 39 years. He was commissioned in the December of 1985, and his journey has spanned commanding troops in high-altitude frontiers, in critical counter-insurgency operations in the northeast of India, to finally holding the helm as the Director General of Assam Rifles, India's oldest paramilitary force. Decorated with some of the highest military honors, including the Param Vishisht Seva Medal, the Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, and the Youth Seva Medal, Lieutenant General Nair represents the finest traditions of courage, integrity, and leadership. But beyond the medals and milestones, he is also a mentor, a lifelong student of strategy, and a leader whose wisdom transcends the battlefield. In this conversation, we dive into the man behind the uniform, his formative years, the mentors who shaped him, his philosophy of leadership, and the lessons he carries with him after nearly 4 decades in service to our great country. So, welcome to Luminary Lounge, Lieutenant General Nair. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Jai Hind, Dr. Murli. Thanks for having me over at this Luminaries launch. A matter of great privilege for me to be here and speaking to some of your viewers. I think most of them are youngsters, so it gives me a great feeling to be with them.
Thank you, sir. So let's start in this extraordinary journey of 38 years and 8 months of service. Let's start at the very beginning. As per the records and my research, I see that you studied at St. Joseph's Boys High School in Khadki. What early influences shaped your decision to join the armed forces?
Well, Khadki is a small military cantonment in Pune. It used to then be suburbs of Pune, but now it's very much part of central Pune, as we call it. And in this small cantonment, to begin with, on the one end, we had the College of Military Engineering, which is, of course, very famous, where people come for their young officers course. They also come to do their degree course, engineering degree. Then at the other end of Khadki, we had a few other military installations like the Army Base Workshop, 512 Base Workshop. Then you had the Ammunition Factory Khadki, which is again very famous. It produces most of the small arms ammunition there. Then you also had the Central Armed Forces Air Vehicles Depot, that is tanks and armored piercing carriers. All those things also got repaired. So all these military establishments were there, and in the center, so to speak, was this Khadki Bazaar, and then a little distance away, the St. Joseph School. So no matter where you went as a child, you saw people in uniform going around, and the influence of that very naturally would come to any youngster. So this olive green of the army was starkly visible every single day that one went to school, came back from school. So it just happened, and from there, the next progression, of course, was to join Sainik School. So that's how it happened.
And when we talk about your childhood, your influence from your parents, the values that they instilled in you, of course, would have become the bedrock of your character. Was there any particular moment or lesson from them that you still carry with you today? Something that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, surely. I would want to let your viewers know that I've come from a very, very humble family, if you can call that one. My father used to work for Kirloskar Oil Engines, which is again in Khadki, and he was a worker. He would have shifts. One week he would go for first shift, which is from 8 in the morning to 4:30 in the evening. The next week would be 4:30 to 12 midnight, and the subsequent week after that, midnight to morning 8 o'clock. So these are the shifts that he used to do in rotation. And obviously it has a major impact on your lifestyle, on how you bring up your family, as also your own, I'm not talking from my father's side, as also on your own health, because you have to make these constant changes every single week. But not for a moment at any point do I remember him complaining about anything. He would just go about his job religiously, and whatever time he would have with us, he would spend with me and my sister, and try and teach us whatever little he knew. And incidentally, he hadn't studied much. He had just studied up to the ninth standard. So the values that I essentially learned from him is hard work, sincerity, and going about your work in a manner that doesn't affect your family, and yet you're able to spend time with your family nevertheless. From my mother, of course, she was a little more educated than my father. She had studied up to 10th class, but she came from a family where she had a total of 10 siblings, while my father's father, paternal grandfather, was a farmer. My mother's father was relatively well-to-do, in the sense he was a block development officer during the British times. So it was like an elevated status compared to the background that my father had. But what my mother also did, besides looking after me and my sister, was uh, we had to make ends meet. St. Joseph's School, of course, was a convent. Fee structure was pretty high by the standards of the level of middle class that we were. And I remember in class one or class two, when I was asking my father, "What's your monthly salary?" So he asked me, "Why are you asking me this question?" I said, "No, no, because some friend of mine asked me, what is your father's salary?" So he laughingly said, "Tell your friend there is sufficient to take care of you. But this you should not tell your friend, if you feel it appropriate, but you tell it." But he said, "My monthly salary is 250 rupees." So I remember that figure. And this I'm talking of 1972. So that is the stature where we were. So mother used to help him make ends meet. She used to stitch blouses for some of the neighbors, some of the people whom we know, and make some more money. So that's the background. So what I learned from my mom is, in spite of taking care of us was one thing, maintaining the complete house. It was not very big, just two rooms. And also finding time to teach us, because she was, like I said, a little more educated. She knew a little more English than my father. And also find time for sewing these blouses and petticoats and all of that to make some more money. So that's another virtue that I learned from her, that make the most of the time that you have, yet spend time for your children, for your family.
Wonderful values, sir. In fact, the one which you spoke about, how not complaining about the work as hard work, as they call it nowadays, is something that you wonderfully expressed there.
Yes, he would work on the top floor. He would be standing for 8 hours continuously and then come home. So you can imagine what kind of life he led.
I think that's a wonderful example. In fact, one of our guests, Professor Rajshekharan, also mentioned in one of the, it was a first podcast, that hard work is something that when you're in the flow, it's not hard. And there is nothing called hard work. That's what he used to kind of talk about when we spoke about. Then I think from St. Joseph School, you moved to Sainik School in Satara. And as far as I can see from my research, it has produced a lot of distinguished officers, including you as one of the 10 lieutenant generals from that institute. And these would have been the formative years in Sainik School. And what was it about those years that prepared you for the journey ahead, sir? This time in Sainik School.
Yes, that's again a good question. But before, like I said in the previous question, that from St. Joseph's to Sainik School was a natural progression. But what came in between? What is it that motivated me to leave my parents and go at the age of 10 and start living in a hostel? My mother wasn't in favor of at all, such a small boy going and staying in a hostel for the next 6, 7 years. What, of course, the army part was there. Joining the army, I said, Sainik School means there is a higher percentage, higher chance of getting into the army. That's one. But I had known a distant cousin of mine who was in Sainik School in Kerala, that is Karakotam. And amongst other things that he told me was, you have great facilities for sports. And I remember 1973, the year that I wrote my exam, was also a period. Of course, cricket was just about becoming very popular. But I could afford to buy, my father couldn't afford to buy me a cricket bat or a ball. And if you wanted to play with the people in the gully
Yeah,
hereabouts,
yeah.
had to have a ball or a
At
bat,
least, yeah.
stumps. Otherwise, they wouldn't take you in the team. So I never got a chance to play. I would just keep watching, sitting on the steps of my door, and keep dreaming maybe I'll also someday play cricket. And when this friend of mine, the cousin of mine, told me, just join Sainik School, you have all sports. I told my father, it's at least for sports I want to join. Academics we'll see, army we will see, but for sports I want to join. And that's how the journey to Sainik School began. But coming back to the question of what are the important things that I learned, Sainik School, of course, was a very different cup of tea. Here I was in the first year in the class, fifth class when I joined, close to 80 kids. And amongst the 80 of them, it was only me and there were two more who knew English. The others were all Marathi medium kids from very, very remote villages. So the Marathi spoken in Pune, Puneri Marathi as it is called, is very, very different from what's spoken in the rural areas. So I would, while I was in Pune as a kid, I didn't speak Marathi much. Well, I understood, but here you get to meet kids from various corners of Maharashtra speaking different dialects of Marathi. It was quite overwhelming for me. And for them, my other co-students, very overwhelming to know these two, three guys only know English. They're the only guys who could speak English. So obviously we got favored in terms of taking part in elocutions, debates, and that in a great way shaped us in getting a self-confidence speaking in public. Public speaking is something important that I learned there. Then the other things that one learned was, you when you live in a dormitory where you have 25 other kids with you, you learn a lot to share. I mean, when you come from home, you get things to eat and then you share, sit together, share. Then if someone is ill, you look after him, take care of him. You make
Yeah.
somebody is next to your bed, that guy will become your great friend.
Yeah.
Then in our own time, we learnt improvisation of playing cricket in the dormitories. It was called as hockret, in the sense a hockey stick
Yeah.
and a ball made out of socks. You put some paper and roll the socks over
Roll
it,
it up.
roll it up, and then play. Improvisation is another thing that one learned. But I think the most important thing that one learned was empathy for your colleagues. So that's something which has stood the test of time in all my years in service. If you have empathy for your colleagues and then that translates down to even to your subordinates, understanding as to what the problems are, that really helps a lot. Then on the lighter side, there's some risks taking things also that one learned there. You were not allowed to go to the town, Satara town. You had to get a pass and all for that. But there was this thrill of breaking rules and going when you're not allowed. So after lights out time, after 8 9 p.m., there were moments when we would break through the window, take off the screws and get up and go watch some movie, and that was a big achievement. And on the way back, then raid some orchards of some of the rich people. There's some the person called Cooper, an industrialist, so jump over the wall, pluck some mangoes, some papayas, some guavas, and come back. So that's a big achievement when you could watch a movie, come back with all these goodies, and yet not get caught. So that's a sense of adventure, breaking the rules in their own small ways, which helped, because all these things help later on in life when one went after militants, insurgents on the quiet. You have to go through the night. These are the baby step from where it all started.
I was hoping for an answer where it would look like, yes, I learned discipline, I learned, all these really wonderful characters, but the way you kind of, told us that the school life can be so much of fun. I'm sure the kids nowadays do miss all that, because there is so much of, one, the academic pressure, and also the second, the draw towards screen. The I would say the ubiquitous nature of screens everywhere around us. I think that's robbing the children of all these small pleasures that you're talking about, of breaking rules, of going and having that camaraderie with your friends, trying to do something naughty, I would, as it's called. But thank you, sir. Thanks for sharing that. And now, later,
But
after yeah,
since you spoke of, if I can interrupt, since you spoke of
yes, sir.
discipline, I mean, in a hostel, in a boarding school, these things are very set, formatted, the routine. So that comes very naturally to you. But I think a couple of other things also I need to mention. I need to draw your attention to the teachers, because I'm making this admission or confession, as you can call it. The teachers who we had then,
Yeah,
they were absolutely selfless. While they taught us in the during the class hours, they also on their own would come and explain meetups during our preparatory period in the hostel.
yeah, yeah,
Willingly they would come, the mathematics teacher, the physics teacher, chemistry teacher. No one had to tell them. And what I'm told nowadays, the in all such public schools, when these expectations are there from the teachers to go and tutor the students, they feel no, that's it's a call beyond their duty. Their duty kind of ends in the classrooms. So that selflessness is no longer there, which was there during our time. And of course, the other thing which came very naturally to us, while you were a junior, you looked up to certain seniors. There were so many of them, but then you looked up to only a select few. Similarly, as a senior, you wanted to shape certain juniors whom you
yeah,
saw a
yeah,
potential. Like, when I
yeah,
remember when I was in class 11, class 12, That was also the time when one was preparing for the National Defense Academy. We saw some, I saw, at least I remember having spotted some brightness in certain colleagues, juniors, and then kind of coaching them little to, or encouraging them to get into debating, elocutions, reading books. So those things also happened side by side. So that is a little
Yes.
serious stuff that you wanted.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. In fact, as you rightly mentioned, the education or any other aspect of society is getting the tag of being a commodity where you can transact. And I think education and even to a large extent health is something that is should be beyond that. And of course, your service to the nation is definitely beyond that. But rightly said, sir. I think we have moved on, but there is definitely a hope to move back to those days. Now, you did mention about NDA here. One of the toughest exams, as I know, very difficult to get into the academy. And you joined NDA in 1982 and later were commissioned to the 18th Sikh Regiment in December 1985. Now, every great leader has had someone who has seen the potential, as you said, in the other person early on. Who was that person for you, perhaps during those early years in NDA or in your initial postings, and who saw that greatness in you, who saw that you could be groomed into somebody who can lead and who can be one of the best leaders? And what did they teach you about leadership that textbooks and courses cannot teach?
Okay, like you said, the examination, India written examination, UPSC itself is one of the toughest examinations to crack. And I must admit here that usually used to get 4 or 5 chances. Two chances while we were in class 11 then, and two chances in class 12. And if you were younger in age, maybe one more chance. So 5 chances. So obviously it is the first chance that you prepare for the most. And I failed in my first attempt. So that's one virtue I learned, and obviously this is something I'd learned from my seniors, some seniors who actually got in the fourth attempt, in the fifth attempt, and I had interacted with them, and I remember them telling me never give up. It is very unlikely that you will clear in the first attempt because very few, and it so happened in the first attempt very few from a batch cleared as well. Only once you've gone through the examination once do you realize what mistakes you make. And then your second attempt is always better than your first. So that's exactly what happened. I got in my second chance. And then, like you said, on getting commissioned, the first place that I reported to was Jammu. My battalion was 18th Sikh. And unfortunately, the time that I joined was immediately after the Operation Blue Star, the Golden
Yeah,
Temple thing
yeah, Golden Temple Blue Star, yeah.
happened. And
1983, yeah.
mine happened to be, I got commissioned to a regiment, Sikh regiment, 18 Sikh. And there were some desertions that happened in my battalion also because the men got provoked by the civilians. So I joined at a time when it was a little critical in the sense there were many inquiries going on against some of the men who had left, and not their fault because they were kind of provoked, like I said, by civilians, by their friends back home, all of that. The initial 5 to 6 months was just sorting this mess out, the inquiries. So there was very little that my immediate seniors in the battalion could influence me in terms of studying and making the most of the time that you have. And like in the army, at least in the initial years, you do lot many courses. While and of course you get reported upon year on year, your annual confidential report. So while you may be a very good officer in terms of performance, in terms of what you're doing in your battalion, but you are not good until you do well on the courses as well. So uh, 8 9 months into my service, when I was going for my first course, my two immediate seniors, they did impress upon me that sorry we couldn't get you, impart the kind of help that we could have otherwise done to prepare you for the course, but notwithstanding you must put in your very best for the course. But then when I went for that, and the course was called the Young Officers Course, I went for the course, and this is the first time that you're meeting after becoming officers. Once you become officers from the Indian Military Academy, you just go your ways to your respective battalions, respective units. Now here is a chance after 8 9 months you're meeting again, and suddenly that mob mentality comes in. So on the one hand is yes, you have to do well on the course, but the other hand is also you're meeting your friends with whom you've been for many years. Like
Yeah.
for example, in my case, some were with me from Sainik School, then NDA, then IMA for so many years. Some of them NDA and IMA, and you make very great friends. So the initial period is all euphoria. Studies is on a side, and to be honest, I didn't pay that much attention to studies, and I got some very mediocre gradings and came back. And when I came back, of course, all the seniors told me you're not done as well as we expected you to. And I was prepared for that kind of a sermon, that kind of a talk, and I did a little bit of introspection that from next course, maybe I need to study hard. It was just a thought. And that is when another officer from another battalion, neighboring battalion, I'll name him Colonel Suresh. He told me, he was also from Kerala. He said, see, you have multiple challenges. You're a South Indian. You're commanding troops who are Sikhs, Punjabis. They speak a very different language. One is you have to learn their language, yes. Second is you have to establish yourself physically in front of them. In front of Sikh, the first thing you have to do is physically you have to tell them, show them that you're as good, if not better than them. Only then will they respect you. And along with this is how you perform on your course. If you don't do well on your courses, it is not just the promotions, but also the standing in front of your men. That matters more than your profession. You may not go beyond a lieutenant colonel. That's irrelevant. That is all luck, what is ordained, what is it fated for you. But if you have to establish yourself in front of your, in the eyes of your men, you have to do well on your courses, get good gradings, and then in handling weapons or in tactics, you have to lead from the front and prove it to them. So that kind of struck me, and I said, and lo and behold, after about 4 5 months, I went on my next course. And this course, again, fortunately, the good part was you had most of the guys were seniors. I was the only second lieutenant, 3 4 second lieutenants. The rest all were captains. There were even 1 or 2 majors. So that mob mentality which was there in the young officers course was not there. The pressure of meeting up with friends was not there. One got the time to study. So I worked hard on that course, and that was a course where I got an instructor grading. And when I came back, this time again, my people in my battalion were shocked. How did you do well? Last time that we expected you to do well, you came back with a very mediocre kind of a grading, and this time you thought maybe you'll do even worse because you are the junior most of the course, the second lieutenant. How could you measure up to captains and majors who had more service? But then that's how. And after that, there was no looking back. So these are some officers, Colonel Suresh, and from my battalion, like before I went for the young officers course, Colonel Rohit Kapoor and Brigadier Keshav. I would like to name them.
Thank you, sir. It was actually very good the way you kind of spoke about how it's important to meet up with friends and enjoy, but at the same time know that there are other things bigger that you need to kind of look at as well. Excellent lesson there. So later, I think in 18 you were posted in some very challenging terrains, including the Siachen Glacier. Can you tell us a little about that particular moment during those early commands that fundamentally shaped your understanding of leadership under extreme conditions? Any specific thing that comes to your mind?
I had the fortune of commanding my battalion at three different places, three disparate, very different places. It started out as a officiating commanding officer, and officiating is as good as a commanding officer. You are accountable for everything that happens because the commanding officer went on a course and there was no suitable or next commanding officer to come. So for about 6 months, I officiated in Assam in a counter-insurgency environment. So it was very challenging. The battalion was deployed in an area of about, if I remember, about 110 square kilometers. And there were the Bodo militants, there were the Ulfa militants, all at their peak. Every day, one would keep thinking that there should be no ambush that happens for your troops, or your no innocents are targeted by these militants by bomb blasts and such like stuff. So it was a great challenge, but fortunately, we could knock off many militants who tried wrong things there in Assam. And from there, the next command was at a place called Faizabad, which is now called Ayodhya, a very different situation. And from there, the third place where I commanded was in Siachen Glacier, like I said. So all these had different sets of challenges. In Siachen, we were again spread out over 128 square kilometers. It was the most glacial prone region there in terms of avalanches. There were 128 avalanche sites in that area that I'm speaking of. So the constant worry was whenever your troops men moved from place A to place B, they should not get caught in an avalanche. So there were many things that one needed to study. There was something called as the SASE study, where the um, people would predict whether there would be any avalanche the next day, and then look into past instances, dates during that period. Then, of course, the necessity to move at all. So I was commanding close to 1,000 men here, and their logistics, the operational requirement. Some posts were facing the Pakistanis. There was a post which was just 30 meters away from the Pakistanis. Fortunately, this was a time when there was ceasefire, so there's no firing happening. So they used to talk openly. 30
Mm.
meters is hardly any distance you can shout
Yeah,
across.
yeah,
But you are also constantly worried. While there was no firing, the Pakis could do anything. They could just kind of infiltrate and just place some improvised explosive device or carry out some activities against you, and then you would have casualties. So that itself was a challenge. Now, in that challenge, how do you ensure no casualties happen? And I had told myself when we went to Siachen Glacier, considering that all previous battalions had suffered lot many casualties. Every battalion had about 10 to 12 people who had died while undertaking normal, regular, routine movement. So I had the fortune of having a second in command, then Lieutenant Colonel, and then later on he took over the command from me, Colonel Rajgopal. We would sit for hours and plan the move of every single person, every single vehicle. And fortunately, during that entire period of command of mine, we didn't have a single casualty, which I think is one of the biggest achievements that I've had. I mean, this doesn't get you any award, but it got the satisfaction for me that 1,000 families, 1,000 men, 1,000 families, and each family there are 8 to 10 dependents on one person. Those many people did not have a casualty. That's a great sense of satisfaction that I have.
That's quite overwhelming, sir. I mean to say, to hear that you looked after not just the men under you, but as you said, the families who are dependent, and the amount of preparation, the amount of strategy that is required to ensure that. I think that was a wonderful lesson there. I think after your initial phase, you later made Northeast of India as your second home, and you spent close to 2 decades of your service there. So, starting as a young company commander in Manipur and Sikkim in 1990s, what did those early years teach you about, say, winning the trust of local communities in, as you said, these insurgency affected areas?
That's a very good question, Dr. Murli. And like you said, my second home, if you ask my heart, my first home is Northeast. My heart beats for Northeast. Unfortunately, the land laws are so stringent that there's hardly any place where I can go and buy a property there, unless I get married to someone from the Northeast, which I didn't. Married to someone from Mumbai, where again we can't even afford to buy a flat. So, on that score, I was not, very very sharp. But but let's come back to the insurgency situation. Insurgency is always people centric. People are at the center, the common people, and this is what you learn. You hear this very often as a junior, as a captain, as a major, but that doesn't make sense to you till you reach senior levels of, let's say, a major general or a lieutenant general. That's when you realize that it's not about those gun toting people. It's not about those people who are ambushing your men, but it is about the common man. It is his concerns that you have to address. Look at his situation. If you put yourself in his shoes, you understand the kind of difficulties that he goes through in terms of, on the one hand, having the militants for whom no rules exist. On the other hand, the pressure that comes from the security forces. If you are able to understand that, then I think half the battle is won. In the sense, then you plan your operations in a manner that you do not upset the locals, you do not interfere in their normal lifestyle. There is a proper messaging done to them as to why a certain operation is being conducted. There is also necessity of showing that you are unbiased and you're doing this essentially for them and not for yourself, because the general feeling that and the media plays, I mean the local vernacular media in those places, kindly makes this narrative very often that officers are more interested in getting awards and all. But awards are incidental. That's a byproduct that just happens. But if the media paints it in a manner, and there's a lot of media that painted it in a manner that the Indian Army, Assam Rifles, they go after all these operations only to get awards, which is not correct at all. So if you know fundamentally that where the problem lies, then, like I said, most of your task is taken care of. So some operations might happen just like that, at the snap of a fingers. You're not thought of it, suddenly you got ambush, for example. Now, let me give you an example. 13th of last month, the Prime Minister visited Manipur. 6 days later, on 19th of September, an Assam Rifle convoy got ambushed. A vehicle got ambushed. 2 men died in that. So while I was not there, but I can imagine what would have happened to the company commander, to the commanding officer who bore the brunt of all that would have come from top. How did this ambush happen? How can your men get killed? No, we're not here. We're not even talking of the two families who lost
Yeah.
their breadwinner. And there are also another 5 or 6 who got injured. I don't know what is their condition, but these injuries will have far-reaching implications all through their life. Now, when this ambush would have happened, what people don't know, what I've gathered is the men who were there in the vehicle could have retaliated. But the only people standing there were the militants, and there were a group of 10, 12 women. If these men had opened fire, surely some of these women would have got killed. The men, what did they do? The driver, despite being injured, he drove his vehicle for another 100 meters. He went 100 meters ahead. They were minimizing casualties. There were more men behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Possibly some more would have got killed. And they also did not retaliate for this reason, that they didn't want any of those innocent women to get killed, because those people were firing from a vehicle. They were quite well protected, whereas these women weren't. Thereafter, what would have happened is Assam Rifles would have they would have all have their sources. These people, of course, escaped, but they would have very properly. I mean, given the disturbed situation that is there in Manipur, they would have sent all kind of messaging they would have done to how to get these people. And it is good that within a matter of 3 or 4 days, they were able to catch two people who were responsible for this ambush. So in all of this, no excesses happened. While they were provoked, there were no casualties to normal people. And there was, again, you would not have read in the media of any militant group claiming responsibility for this ambush. So what that means is, obviously the militant group does not have the support of the people, the local people, the common
Hmm.
man.
Yeah.
And this is something which has happened in Manipur for the first time. So when there is no support, what it means is that the people there are convinced that the security forces, Assam Rifles in this instant case, is doing a job which is supposed to be done.
Yeah.
And we should not openly support these militants. So this is something different that has happened, and this is how normally we undertook operations. Keep the people at the center of your operation. Rest fall things will fall in place.
Yeah, I can understand. Very, very sensitive issue. At the same time, you have to protect the people, but at the same time, you have to ensure that you're guarding the people in a way that it doesn't hurt them. So you have to work with them, but also you have to work against the people
Yes,
who are actually
it's
harming
a
the.
challenge. It's a tightrope walk.
Is a tightrope walk. I can understand, sir. But you have been awarded the Chief of Army Staff Commendation Card 3 times. Now, as a doctor, I don't know what it means, but I know that it is something very, very important. And behind these recognitions would be real stories of leadership and decision making. Now, without going into the details, can you share one incident that you're particularly proud of? Not necessarily the most decorated, but one that defines your character as a leader and what we can learn from that in terms of leadership skills?
Well, in the chronology, in the order of importance, like you said, Param Vishnu Seva Medal is the most important. Then is the AVS Amati Vishnu Seva Medal. Then is the Yuddha Seva Medal, and then are the three Chief of Army Staff Commendation Card, where the Army Chief commends you for some. It could be an act of bravery. It could be some other act for which you get awarded this. So I'm not picking the PVSM the highest, but I'm picking the lowest in this, which is the Chief of Army Staff Commendation Card, which, I mean, one of them that I'm talking of, which I got in Assam, a counter-insurgency role. Now, why I want to specifically mention this, because you said, tell us something which in some way shows your character. And this is not a boast. Let me begin with that. So there was this place called as Boko, a village called as Boko, bordering Assam and Meghalaya, which was at the foothills of Meghalaya. After that, there's a place called William Nagar in Meghalaya, where you got into the hills. So in this village of Boko, militants used to, while they would camp in Meghalaya, but they would, and Meghalaya didn't have any Armed Forces Special Powers Act, so we could not enter those forests, even if we knew the militants were there. It was only prevalent in Assam. So unless the militants came to Assam, we could not go after them. So this village of Boko was about 6 hours of driving, and followed by about 4 hours of walking. Only then could you reach this village because there's no road. So this is a place where I was a company commander there. We had gone about 32 times, 32 attempts we had made. But every single time we went, these militants would run away to the forest. We kept wondering, why is that so? I mean, we would do everything that was possible, go by night, encircle the village at night, not a sound, go with minimal force, yet these guys would run away. So we planted some of our sources inside the village who belong to nearby villages. And then we came to know that the tip off would be given by the villagers only. The moment you got off the vehicle, they would know. Of course, there were no radio sets, but there would be people running across, going to the next village, a relay kind of a system
Yeah, yeah.
from one village to the next to the next. So by the time you reach the village, these people would already get the information. So I said, why not take a chance? So this is, I'm talking of the 34th attempt. So my commanding officer told me, no, you've already gone 30 odd times. You're not going to get anything. Why do you want to waste time? 6 hours of drive, you'll take three vehicles, three big vehicles. Then imagine and you'll come back like that. I said, so just give me one more attempt. So with no information, we just went. This time we went and halted the vehicles even 5 kilometers before, not at the usual places where we would halt. And we walked a lot more. And since it was winter, the hours of darkness were much more. We encircled the village. And now, once you encircle the village, now you don't know which house, whether the militants are there or not, that also you don't know. But we contacted our source, whom we had given a radio set, after we reached the village and after we encircled. And we asked him, are these guys there? He said, yes, there are two very important guys, two very important leaders of Alpha who are here. He named them and their rank also. One was a major, a self-styled major of Alpha, and one was a captain. These two guys were there in the village. Now, this is all input he gave. There were about 35, 40 houses in that. Now, which house do you start? You don't know whether this guy is armed. You don't know. You don't know how he looks like. Nothing you know. You're
Okay.
just taking a guess. So I went around the village about twice, and this was before daylight. And whatever with my night vision devices, whatever I could establish from the houses, thermal imaging and all, trying to see which house has got more people in it. I kind of visualized that they'll be in a house where there are less people. So I identified those houses, and then I homed on to one particular house. And this is all luck. It is nothing great to do with my tactics. I just thought this particular, since we had come to that village so many times, one particular house we chose. We said, let's start looking from this house. So when it was dawn, we started search with that house. And it so happened that Major, the most important guy, was right there in that house. So I was still giving directions, final directions to my people to surround that house. And my back was towards the house. And I told everyone, no one will open fire till the first bullet that we fired will be by me.
Okay.
Because in such places, obviously, there'll be collateral damage. You'll kill children, old people. So orders were very explicit. Till my bullet fires, nobody will open fire. Now, while I was still giving direction, this fellow inside realized that he's going to get shot up very soon. So what he does is he just comes out rushing with his AK.
Okay.
And I hadn't noticed. He had come
Yeah.
as close as 5 meters behind me.
Okay.
And at the moment that he was pressing the trigger to, I mean, though I had my bulletproof, but at that range, if he had opened a burst, there was no way I would have escaped. There was a soldier on my left, a fellow with 6 months of service, a young guy, Mayor Singh. I think he's now Suvidar. He's a Suvidar, he would be retiring. Now, this guy, he also knew the orders are, company commander said no bullet to be fired till I, but he used his presence of mind. He opened fire. And he would have opened fire on this militant just about half a second before this guy pulled the trigger, the militant. So he fell at my feet after having pressed the trigger, and the bullets were all flying left, right of me. It's a
Yeah.
typical movie style.
Uh-huh.
So obviously my reaction was instantly to turn around and kill him, to fire my weapon also, which I did. So in that heat, now you don't know whether he's died because of my bullet or that soldier's bullet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could
Yeah.
have been either. But I
Yeah.
used my common sense. I said, if he had not been hit by his bullet, he wouldn't have fallen in the first place. But the moment I started firing at him, he was already prostrate, almost
Falling.
getting prostrate, almost falling. So, and the second guy, there's another party of mine. There's a junior of mine, a captain, who caught the second guy, and some Havaldar with him knocked off that guy. So, two important militants knocked off, and it was great news in Assam. Two important militants knocked off, and of course, when we came, there's a huge reception. I mean, warm reception from the commanding officer and the brigade commander, and then, of course, a debriefing kind of thing happens as to what happened and all of that. So the brigade commander told my commanding officer, I was a lieutenant colonel then. He surely uh, deserves to get an award. So please put up his citation for an award. So my commanding officer told me, okay, make a citation for yourself and the other two soldiers who were there. So somehow I felt I didn't actually deserve this award. It should go to this Sipai. I told my CO, sir, I think it is him, because if it was not for his presence of mind, I would not have been standing in front of you now. I
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
been gone by now. So CEO said, no, that guy is a youngster. He'll have ample opportunities, but now very soon you'll become CEO. So it'll look good on you. You're getting a bravery award. I say, sir, on the contrary, I feel no. I have to face these men when I become the CEO. I can't be taking an award which I don't deserve. While yes, I also fired bullets into that guy, but by then he was also in any case dying. So I don't think I deserve this award. The CEO told me, no, think over. It's a good award that will come your way. I said, no, sir, I don't. I would rather not have such an award. So so eventually that soldier got, probably, I think if my name had gone and if it was such an important militant, I would have got a Shaurya Chakra, if not a Sena medal. The soldier who saved me got a Sena medal eventually, and that time he got 5 acres of land also in Punjab. So now he's pretty rich. This is also getting the allowances of Seva Medal. But there's a huge connect between that soldier and me. He's, like I said, a Subedar. But when I look back, I feel that award meant nothing for me, given that this fellow saved my life. So I hold that Chief of Army Staff, yet I got a Chief of Army Staff commendation for having led that operation, not for killing the militants, for led a very successful operation. That is why I got an award. So I value that award the most, probably a little more than Param Vishis Seva Medal.
Sir, it is a wonderful listening to you. And as I was listening, there are multiple things that came to my mind. But the first thing that came to my mind was the humility. The humility to recognize that you didn't deserve it. And just like in life, when we pass an exam and by luck we get the questions from the chapters that we have studied, we feel good about the marks, but deep within we know that we haven't earned it. But at the same time, somebody who's really struggled hard and has earned the same marks probably feels that he has earned it. So I think a very, very important lesson to youngsters there, that earning what you actually, deserve at the end of the day is more important than just earning. Thank you very much for sharing that wonderful episode and the connect that you still have with that person. I think it goes
Yes, we are
a
still in
long
touch.
way.
We exchange greetings. We already exchanged Dashara greetings this morning.
Oh, excellent, sir, excellent. And as you mentioned about the community relations with people in Northeast, you've been there for 2 decades. How has it evolved over these last 2 decades?
It's a very good point that you brought out, and I will again take my mind back to Manipur. The first time that I went to Manipur was in 1996, 1997, a year and a half. Now, like currently, you're witnessing fights between the Kukis and the Metis. Then the fight was between the Kukis and the Nagas. What was different was insurgency was at its peak. You had the valley-based militant groups, that is the Methi militants. You had the Naga militants also, the NSCN IM, the NSCN K, Khaplang, all these factions all over in Manipur. So very difficult, two very contrasting situations. On the one hand, it was a counterinsurgency where you have to go after the militants. On the other, internal security where you have to prevent the Kukis and the Nagas from fighting. So there are three communities. The Metis, obviously, some of them, a large number of them would support their militants. And the PLA, UNLF, these are all Methi militant groups. They were experts in carrying out IED blasts. They were experts in attacking your posts. They would just come and fire rockets at your post and run away. And I mean, you have to be really on the watch. Some lone guy coming and firing a couple of rockets and running away into the jungle, very difficult to track him. So we have to be constantly on the watch, first to begin with security of our own post, our people who are there, then of the people who went out. Constantly monitor your men who are going out. Most of the times you as a company commander are leading them, sometimes in one direction, sometimes the totally other direction. When you go out, sometimes you go for maybe one day, but you come back after 3 days, 4 days. Great challenges, and no GPS, nothing. You just had a compass, and had many times those that compasses would get damaged, and then you're
Mhm.
only waiting for daylight or look at the moon, and then try to align which is north, which is south. Very tough conditions, and of course there were nothing like all these tinned rations, etc. was not there. You
Mhm.
ate whatever you got, sometimes from the village, sometimes from the jungles. So coming back to the particular part of handling the communities, you had to be seen as totally unbiased with
Mhm.
all the three communities. You had to constantly interact with them. You have to undertake certain developmental project with the little funds that you got. So
Yeah.
each village would have some requirement. Okay, please make a shed for me. Make a community hall for me. Make a classroom for me. Please make a pipeline for us. Please give us some. I mean, solar panels were just being introduced.
Yeah.
Or at least, uh, those very in the form that it came those days. Multiple requests from multiple places, and you had to balance it out between all these three communities. Sometimes you would feel that a particular village needed more, but you didn't have the funds or the resources to give them. So whatever you gave them, you have to convince them that this is the best I could do. But what we also would do is we would interact with the district commissioner, the local council, village councils, and get something from them. We would try and make whatever we were giving, whatever they were giving, co-terminus in terms of what they want. If they wanted streetlights, then we would take their funds, our funds, and get streetlights. If they wanted drinking water pipelines, then get that water tank, get that community hall, all of that. So this was a task where constantly you had to keep helping all the three communities that are there. And if you did not do that, The flip side would be then one particular community will support or will give help to some of their militants, and your post might get attacked, or you'll get ambushed, or there'll be some ID blast open on you. Fortunately, nothing of this kind happened during my entire tenure, and that's where again I think luck certainly played a part, but it also had to do with how we handle the local. Because whenever an ambush happens, whenever an ID blast takes place, in all likelihood, there is a forewarning that the locals get. So nothing has happened would also mean that the locals are not in favor of those kind of activities being carried against you.
So I think, as you rightly mentioned, Assam Rifles have been called the Friends of the Hill People and also Sentinels of the Northeast. So you explained very well, actually, how you go about doing that. But when you took over as the 21st Director General in June 2021, what was your philosophy, having been in the Northeast, about leading this organization, both as a security force and a development partner?
Well, when I took over as the 21st Director General of Assam Rifles, this was my fourth outing with the Assam Rifles. I started out as a company commander, as a major, then in Nagaland and Manipur. Then again, I went there as a brigade commander, though not in Assam Rifle, as part of the Indian Army, an army brigadier commanding a brigade. But I had three Assam Rifle units under me. I had three infantry units and three Assam Rifle units. So I already had that background of being a junior officer, so I knew it helped me, hit the ground running. And then, of course, I became the Inspector General in Nagaland, the third time that I was with the Assam Rifle, and finally as the Director General. So I had a lot of domain knowledge which worked to my advantage. Very many of my predecessors were fortunate for that. In fact, some of them, their first exposure to Assam Rifle itself was as a Director General. So I had this great advantage of having worked in a force which has a system of dual command, both command of the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Home Affairs, the operational command with the MOD and the MHA doing the administrative command. So this greatly helped me. While I was low down in the hierarchy as a major, my outlook was very different. My outlook was only about knocking off militants, ensuring peace, and ensure that the people creating trouble in your area are reduced. That was an outlook that you had. And also the fact that you were constantly worried about your men, their lives, because every Assam Rifle battalion has so many people who have laid down their lives for their battalion, and it really pains you. What is different about the Assam Rifles is a fellow joins Assam Rifles as a soldier when he's 18, 19, 20. He retires at the age of 60, which means 40 years. He's only in an insurgency environment, which is very different from Indian Army. An Indian Army soldier gets to be in peace station 2 to 3 years, and then he goes to a field, and his field need not necessarily be a counterinsurgency area.
Yeah.
It could be somewhere else on the borders. It could be on the JNK borders, LAC, China LAC, where not every day does firing happen. So that way, at least his life is a lot safer. Plus, the fact that a infantry battalion soldier retires in about 14 to 20 years of service, which means by the time he's 40, he's gone home already. So here is an Assam Rifle soldier who now puts in 20 years more, putting his life to risk. Imagine his plight. He's away from his family for 40 years. So the other thing that was on my mind was also, how should I work towards making him a normal person, in the sense when he goes back at the age of 60, you try and put yourself in his shoes. You join as a teenager. When you retire, you're already a grandfather. See the transition that has happened. See how the world has changed for you back home. So he has to be in a manner to be taken care of while he's in service here. So constantly, I would tell the men to the Assam Rifle men as a get their families to stations where they were posted, so that they get some time to spend with their families. In addition, it makes their children proud to see their fathers in whatever assignment that they're doing on these very, very far remote places. It really changes them. They have a lot to talk with their friends, with their colleagues when they go back. And this I learned when I've interacted with multiple families, their children. The other thing that I also wanted to do as a Director General was to make the force modern, technologically sound, keep up with evolving technologies. Now, of course, Operation Sindoor has happened. A lot of the Indian public has got to know as to what is drone warfare, how is drone employed. But we had started this all in 2021 itself in a big way. A large number of drones were procured during our time. We also tried to modernize some of the weapons, some of the night vision devices, which are very important, overhauling of some of the vehicles that we had. new generation vehicles. Then is the ammunition, to make the ammunition better. And unlike the Ministry of Defense, process in the Home Ministry is a lot faster. As a Director General, if you convince the Home Minister and the Home Secretary that there is a specific need for a particular thing, it comes a lot faster. The bureaucracy is not as much. This is my personal thing. Some may not agree. Things work faster there. So these are few things that I had kept in mind, which I think I was able to deliver while I was there.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for sharing this. One thing which actually, what you spoke, is still lingering in my head is the fact that somebody joins when they're a teenager and they retire when they're 60. And I was just thinking about, as a doctor, when we go out, for a conference or something for 4 days away from family, that itself feels very hard. That you're looking back, when do you want to get back home and eat home food? So, uh, I don't think I have enough of words to kind of thank all the soldiers and all the men under you, and of course, people who are still working for the service of the nation, because the amount of sacrifice that goes in is something that we as civilians would not understand. And thanks for highlighting that. It takes me to my next, I would say, point on this conversation is the balance between the emotions and judgment. As somebody who's leading a force of, I don't know how many people are in Assam Rifles, probably 50, 60,000.
Yes. 66, 67,000.
66, 67,000. And especially when we have seen crises like the Manipur crisis in the last 15 months, how do you maintain that emotional balance and clear judgment when dealing with situations where your decisions are not just about operations, but about lives of ordinary citizens caught in conflict? Does it kind of rob your sleep?
It does. It does. I'm glad you touched upon Manipur because that is the example I want to give. All this started on the 3rd of May 2023, the current spate of violence that you see. What is in the public domain, the media keeps saying is that it is because of the order, the High Court order, which went out on 28th of March, where they said they asked the state government, to consider giving scheduled tribe SC status to the Meiteis, and that kind of triggered the complete violence. While that is one side, there are few other issues to it also, because I need to give this background before I come to your question proper. So while this surely was the trigger, but there were certain other things like creation of additional districts which happened. 9 more districts got created, which was not to the liking of the Nagas. Then 3 bills were passed in Manipur Assembly in 2015 August, which again was not to the liking of the hill people, both the Nagas and the Kukis. And the Kukis took out some protests then also. There were the police firing that happened. 9 people were killed, and these bodies were kept in state for 632 days before they were finally given the last rites. So there are many other things which are connected to this current violence that is happening. In this, like you very brought out, you brought out that there was a need to ensure that your emotions don't get the better of you insofar as your judgment goes. And in this, I would like to give the example or give the situation where Assam Rifle constantly got bad press, bad media for being partial to a particular group, cookies to be more specific, at the cost of Metis. Now, this got spun around so many times in social media, in print media, that people started believing it. People in Delhi would question me as to why are you favoring one community? We said, no, there is no question of favoring a particular community. It is just that all that we were trying to do was prevent violence between the two communities. So if armed people of one group would try and enter the village of another group with arms, try to inflict casualties on them, we would stop them, no matter which community they happen to be. And in this process, we got a bad name for favoring. If we protected a certain community, it was taken as we are pro that community, which is not the case. And I would constantly give this example. How can we be partial to a particular community given that we have soldiers from both the communities amongst us?
Yeah.
Soldiers, we have about close to 30% of the soldiers are from the Northeast. And of those 30%, almost about 40 to 45% are from Manipur, from both communities. So if your soldiers see you favoring one community, there'll be mayhem within the battalions. And it was to the credit of the commanding officers and the company commanders of Assam Rifles that nothing of this kind has happened. Look at how polarized the people of Manipur are. But that polarization has not really affected the men who are in uniform, whereas rightly it should have, given that even these men go on leave, they go home. and they're constantly being bombarded by one side of the story from people from their community. Yet, till date, not a single instance has happened where within the forces, these two communities have fought or there has been any misunderstanding between them. So that itself is a clear evidence of the fact that we did not favor any community. And given the bad press that came against us, normally the reaction would be, again, if the emotions have to override you, then you start becoming more stricter against that particular community. Nothing, we did nothing of that kind. In fact, this year itself, there have been two cycles of flood in Manipur. And it is the same set of people who condemned us, a large number of the Metis, for us being pro cookies. Today, they're full of praises. This year, last year, year previous to that also. Every year, last 3 years, Manipur has been ravaged by floods. And every single time, it is the Assam Rifles which has come to their help. And every year, 25, 30,000 people have been saved from being displaced.
Thank you, sir. And it's actually, as you said, a very challenging task, and rightly you described the way you actually handle it. Looking back at your educational journey, you have, as you said, been through many of the courses and have risen in the ranks, and also pursuing a PhD, if I'm not mistaken. How has this helped you approach the complex problem-solving, situations that you face? And is there anything that we can learn from it?
Yeah, firstly,
Hacks that you have, any life hacks that have helped you on the way?
no life hacks, but let me tell you my story. Of course, I have greater respect for people who have become doctors through the medical way, because that is, I mean, my wife, we have huge respect for doctors, and
Thank you.
there's no doctor in our family, unfortunately. So, for example, for me, you're a relative. If I can call
Thank
you
you.
one, because we really look up to every single doctor with great degree of admiration. But coming back to the PhD itself, I started out doing my PhD when I was a brigadier. And by the time I completed it, I was already a lieutenant general. So three different ranks and different multiple assignments, appointments, which were very challenging. When I started out, it was not at my own. There's a friend of mine, another brigadier, who was 6 months senior to me. He had already done his PhD. He said, "Why don't you do PhD?" I said, "Are you joking? PhD while in service is not possible." He said, "Why?" I said, when I started out, I was in Delhi. I said, the curriculum says that I have to attend classes for 2 months in a row. How will I attend classes? He said,
Uh-huh.
take leave. You are entitled to 2 months leave. I said, in Delhi, nobody gives you 2 months leave. They say, why do you want 2 months leave? Your family is with you. So he said, no, that just requires a little bit of convincing. And it was very tough. When I told my people in the hierarchy that I'm doing a PhD, why are you doing PhD? Do it after retirement. Not now. If you go now for 2 months, 2 months is a long time. Okay, 20 days. Then it was a lot of bargaining. Took 1 week for me to convince my boss, his boss, and his boss. They said, okay, you start out. So that's where the first struggle started. Then the other struggle was, of course, when I realized the enormity of this. It is not just reading up, but it is also got to do with meeting up with people, field surveys, research that you have to do. And it's 5 long years. We were a batch of, when we started out from IGNOU, we were about 14 of us. So firstly, I could manage these 2 months of leave. I attended class every single day, would drive down to IGNOU, attend, and then come back. It was a different feeling because I was amongst the oldest in our batch. We had guys as young as 24, 25. But thankfully for me, there were two guys elder to me also. There was one person who was retired, who was 10 years into his retirement. He was close to 70 and he was still doing his PhD. So I was not the grandfather of the batch. That was a great motivation, to see somebody at the age of 70 doing PhD. It further reinforced in me the fact that it is never late to start doing a PhD in the first place. Then the second challenge, like I said, was going and meeting up with people in the field. And since mine was related to Northeast, here was a situation where I was in Delhi. How do I do research in the Northeast? Thankfully, luck came my way. My next posting as a major general was back to Nagaland. So there I was for the next 2 years, and a lot of field study I did. I traveled extensively to Arunachal Pradesh, to Mizoram, to Meghalaya, Manipur, Nagaland itself. And that field research helped me in not only understanding people, their views, but also realizing that it is not what you read in the books is very different from when you interact with people. It's an entirely a new ball game. There is so much that the value addition that you can do. And in this journey, I was also fortunate to meet many chief ministers, many governors of states, and they had a very different view. Some of it political, but political part I would never include in my research. But the other things, in so far as how they looked at their state, the problems that were there in the state. All of that I could put, and this is something which I found in no literature. It was not there in any of the books, because books are usually written by intellectuals, by academics who really don't have a feel of the ground. So that is another thing that I learned while doing my research. And the other important thing was also about there were examinations, which I never thought there will be examinations. So they had certain written examinations also at the end of first year. And here I was again writing papers for 3 hours. And after about, I mean, one had not written for 3 hours continuously.
You're probably used to just signing documents.
It was signing. So the first paper I remember, after about half an hour, I started getting cramps in my hand. No, then when I came back, my hand was all swollen up for attempting an exam for 3 hours. I came back, I had to undergo some kind of a physiotherapy from my wife and my kids, getting me ready for the next paper. But fortunately, the next 4 papers passed. It was not as bad. So these are few surprises that came my way. But at the end of it all, I mean, after that, again, I came back to Delhi in my fourth year. I still had a fourth year to do, a fifth year to do. And by the time I got into my fifth year, I was back as DJ Assam Rifles. So it was back and forth between Delhi. Destiny helped me. Whenever I wanted the research part, I would get posted there, and it helped me doing my research. But what I want to tell your viewers is at least the research part, where you have to actually physically meet up with people, that is very important. I feel that is more important than spending time on books. There's a lot of knowledge that you get when you meet and interact.
Thank you, sir. And you also moved from, say, tactical roles to strategic roles. As you said, you moved back from Delhi to Northeast. And again, coming back to leadership, how does the perspective change? Say, example, when you're on the ground and when you're sitting in a room deciding about people on the ground.
In some way, I made a reference of this earlier, that while you're younger in service, junior in ranks, your outlook is very different. You're kind of
Yeah.
living by the day.
Yeah.
That day, maybe the next day, you're not planning too much in advance.
Yeah.
Because whatever you do, whatever decisions you take will affect only those 50, 60, maybe 100 people, or to a larger extent, if you're a CEO, maybe those 5, 6, 7, 800 people under you. As you rise in ranks, as you become more senior, you have to be watchful of every single thing that you speak, every
Uh-huh.
utterances of yours, every document that you sign. There is a lot of trust that has to be created, generated, and imposed on the staff that is working for you, because it is humanly impossible for you to go through all the documents that are there in front of you. But what is constantly behind your mind is, wherever you put your signature is going to impact people, is going to impact lives, is going to impact the manner in which they live, the operations, how you're preparing them for operations. It could be veterans, it could be the women, it could be Assam Rifle also has women soldiers. So there are so many people who get affected by decisions that you take. One has to be very watchful. So what is important at the higher level is your time management, because in all of this you also have to travel extensively.
Uh-huh.
And I would like to tell your viewers that when I finally retired, one day before my retirement, my PA comes and tells me, "Sir, I've just calculated the total number of days that you were there." I said, "Don't tell me the number only, tell me percentage." He
Uh-huh.
says, "Sir, you were here only, only for 38% of your time. 62% you were out. You are not in Shillong at all. You were only traveling."
Yeah.
So, and that is not peculiar to me. It's everyone who reaches there. So most of the time you won't be there. And why that is needed is your visibility, your presence at other places is required. One is, of course, the official part where you keep getting called for meetings. But more importantly, for a soldier, it is also to be seen by his troops and heard by them. And there's a huge amount of inputs that you get when you interact with troops.
Yes.
If it is once or twice, people are shy, they will not talk. But when these soldiers realize that not only do you ask them for questions, suggestions, but you also work on them. And some very brilliant suggestions have come from soldiers who are as junior as having 2 years, 3 years of service. And when I implemented some of those suggestions, that's when a message went across that this person not only just hears us out, but also implements them. So those are things which will not come to you directly if you ask your immediate subordinates. It will never come. They will just, I mean, that messaging will just go that the
The
DG wants to
barriers.
know ECD. That I will never come in the form that you want. As against when you interact with them on the field, on ground, on borders, in insurgency areas, it's very different. So that's how the junior level thing is very different from a senior level. And also you have to, so like I said, it's a very fine balance. As a DG, you're commanding a force which is under two ministries, very
Yeah.
peculiar. On a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis, you have to balance out both. You have to
So,
constantly keep engaging at the functional level. How that happens is many times there are situations where there would be egos that would hamper smooth functioning of your organization. So your own staff officers are again interacting with the Home Ministry, with also
The
people in
minister.
Oli, the army guys, and it's a very delicate balance that has to be maintained.
So you spoke about young soldiers and how it's important to interact. Now, having recruited new talent into the army, what changes are you observing with aspirations and capabilities of young Indians who are joining the forces now?
Okay, aspiration now. While I was, it so happened that during my time as the Director General Recruiting, had two things happening. One was COVID, which stopped the recruitment, but that is also a time when we realized that we never knew when this COVID will stop.
Yeah,
So year on year, there are certain numbers of people who were retiring. Close to 60 to 70,000 people were retiring. So if we did not recruit 60, 70,000 people in a year, those many numbers would get added up for the next year. So that means if we were recruiting 70,000 in a year, next year that capability had to go up twice the number,
twice.
one and
Yeah.
a half lakhs. And most of the times we were not. So we did try to get this over by recruiting certain numbers, brought down those numbers. But what I noticed also was your methodology of recruitment itself has to be, firstly, as far as possible, take care of the aspirations of the people that is there. Second, where many times we would go wrong is in messaging as to what job demands what thing. Many people didn't even know. For example, now this though I was not DJ recruiting, but in Assam Rifles, when I went to for recruitment in the Northeast at one place, I saw two Sikh boys. So I said, from some distant village in Punjab, I said, "What are you doing here?" They said, "No, we somebody told us there is a recruitment happening of Punjab Police, so we came here." I said, "This is Northeast." They say, but that is the messaging I got. So similar situation I noticed while I was in the army also. Sometimes you had graduates, postgraduates coming for vacancies of a carpenter, of a some other tradesman, a
Yeah.
housekeeper, or a steward, because they didn't know. The only message that they got was it's recruitment happening
Recruitment.
and
Yeah.
in the army, and once you go there, you can decide which trade you want to go to.
Yeah.
So that was another important thing I learned, that the correct messaging in terms of what is this vacancy for and how can you apply for this. There was also a system where I noticed in the previous years of the papers getting leaked, question papers for recruitment. So we instituted methodologies where it became almost leak proof. You could not. So that was another achievement, that if I can call that one, while as the DG rep.
So moving a little bit to the India's Act East policy, Northeast is your home and probably everything else is secondary. So can you just tell us a little bit about the India's Act East policy and why Northeast as geographical territory is important for the country for the future?
I'll begin with why North Act East itself is important for us. It began as a look east policy in the early 90s, and we started looking east more for reasons of more for economic reasons, trade, commerce, all of that, because the Southeast Asian countries were doing, ASEAN countries were doing phenomenally well. Southeast Asian, ASEAN tigers, as they were called, tiger economies, they still are. Most of them are doing very well now also. So while it started that way, more of commerce and economic reasons, but gradually I think we realized it's also got to do with the people to people connect. Centuries old, what is beyond the Indo-Myanmar borders, Myanmar, Burma,
Yeah.
which was part of 1937. And this is something which I keep emphasizing to people, that in the Northeast, people say our first partition happened in 1937 and not 1947, as much of the country
Hmm.
identifies partition with.
Hmm.
So suddenly, I mean, for administrative reasons, the Britishers, till then, which was part of British India, was made as a separate company. Burma was just one of the territories of British India. So suddenly a line got drawn, an artificial line. By doing that, you have divided people who have lived together as one for centuries. So there was, and there still is, a need to ensure that this connect is maintained, person to person connect is maintained, and rest. There is also issue of security. Most of the insurgent camps used to be located earlier in Bangladesh and Myanmar. Bangladesh, of course, they were all thrown out during Hasina's time, Sheikh Hasina's time. So most of these camps are still there in Myanmar. These are also the insurgents who create all kinds of trouble for us in the Northeast. So there is a need for us to ensure that we have good relationship with Myanmar, which we have been having for decades. In fact, Myanmar has borders that it shares with 5 different countries. For them, Indian border is the most peaceful. The most troubled border, as far as they look at, is the Chinese border. Then, of course, they have borders with Bangladesh, they have with Thailand and Laos. These are the other countries that they share borders with. So when we act east, now we also call it as act fast in the act east policy, and act beyond east, or look far east, which means we are looking at right up to Japan, Philippines, and all of that. So what will come in this is the road connectivity that will happen. A trilateral highway which comes from India, goes to Myanmar, onto Thailand, but it also has a potential of going right up to Singapore through Malaysia and the other countries of the Mekong region, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam,
Vietnam.
they also get connected in the process. So that opens up huge prospects for us in trade. And in times to come, this is where we should be focusing on, because on the other two borders, western border, you have Pakistan, which can never change, and not during our lifetime. China, you know where it is heading,
Yeah.
given the
Yeah.
huge turmoil that it is creating. So these two borders, we are not going to make headway, not in our lifetime, that is for sure. So this is the only option left for us for a land-to-land connectivity. It's a bridge. The Northeast is the bridge which will take us to these ASEAN countries. And what works in our favor, which is not favorable to the Chinese, is the cultural connect that we have there. For those of us who have traveled to these countries, you see the country. I mean, first time when I went to Bali, for example, of course, it has got Hindus. So me and my wife, we heard this Gayatri Mantra being played. So we asked the shopkeeper. Incidentally, he was a Muslim, though in Bali, but he was a Muslim wearing a skull cap. We asked him, what is this song which is being played? He said something in Indonesian we couldn't understand. We said, no, no, this is called Gayatri Mantra and this has come from India to you. He started laughing. He said, no, 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 it has gone to India from us. That is the
Connect.
belief,
Connect.
belief they have. The second point, I'll give an example of Myanmar, because that is a country where I've visited 4 or 5 times officially. Whether in my interactions, all these official visits with the civilians, with the army people, defense forces, they constantly tell us, for us, we look for that in our lifetime, we should visit India once. We have to go to Nalanda, we have to go to Gaya, we have to go to Sarnath. If we visit these three places, for us, it is like a Muslim having visited Mecca,
Okay. Yeah.
or a Christian having gone, Catholic having gone to Vatican. It's something
Yeah.
like this. So it's a deep rooted aspiration that every single person in Burma has. And this feeling extends in all other countries, in the Southeast Asian countries. Most of these are Buddhist prominent.
Buddhist.
And what we have done well is creation of this Nalanda University, which is there, the new university, which is an idea of the late President Abdul Kalam. So 60% of the students who are there are indulging in Buddhist studies. And 60% of the students, all these have come from Southeast Asian countries. So
So
we have
it's so
understood the significance of the Northeast, by extension, Southeast Asian countries. And in all of this, Assam Rifle has got a major role to play, because it is the border guarding force. It is responsible for guarding this Indo-Myanmar border. So if you have to have these people to people connect in times to come, if you have, like, trade happens only from More, if you have the Zokhautar access through Mizoram, or also the Pangsau Pass in Arunachal Pradesh, Assam Rifle will have a great role to play in helping this trade to flourish.
In fact, I was going through one of your videos about Vijayanagar as a place that should actually develop, and I was just looking at
Yeah,
the valley in one of those YouTube videos,
it's so
and it is
beautiful.
so beautiful, so scenic. I can see another decade or so, if things go the right way, that will be a very popular place for people to visit, not only for the tourism but also for the historic nature that it holds. And I request viewers to kind of read a little bit more about the Vijayanagar and the history that actually it's wonderful. Sir, if I'm not mistaken, you also institutionalized Veterans Day on March 23rd during your tenure. What drove this initiative? And uh, the second question to follow with the same is, what do you believe we owe our veterans and Veer Naris, apart from the ceremonial recognition that we give? Is there anything else that we can do?
There is a lot that can be done for a veteran, and for the serving community, if they understand that eventually all of us will be veterans, if they start out with this idea in the mind, a lot of things can be done for the veterans. What happens now, let's talk of Assam Rifle, for example, by extension that is even applicable to the Indian Army. All these people get to serve in the Northeast, and Assam Rifle is headquartered here, but you have people who are pan-Indian. You have people from Tamil Nadu, Kerala, J&K also coming. So once they retire and go to their respective villages, it is very rarely that they will travel back to the Northeast.
Uh-huh.
So in that way, that umbilical cord gets cut. But how Assam Rifles as a force can do is, it has these ex-servicemen cells which are offices established all over the country. Those people are in touch with the veterans who are there in their respective areas. So they are constantly told of it, not just going beyond ceremonial, whatever new policies come which affect their pay and allowances, their health policies, for example, anything else, it is communicated to them. Otherwise, they will not even come to know wherever they are in their remote places. Similarly, we have a sizable number in Nepal. A lot of veterans in Nepal also. Every DG visits Nepal at least once. I had the fortune of visiting them twice and personally hearing their grievances. It's not just their grievances, it's also of the Veer Naris and other widows whose husbands have not died in operation but have died otherwise. There is a lot we come to know in terms of what we can do for them, for their children's education, their health related issues, their normal lifestyle. A lot can be done. Fortunately, there are many states within India also now which are giving more vacancies, opportunities in the job market, in the educational field, also in schools, colleges. Now, these messages don't reach them. In all these ex-servicemen camps that are held, it is done and it has immensely helped. What has happened in this by creating this Veterans Days, on this day, all veterans in the neighboring areas are called out. Northeast, it works well almost every where you have a Assam Rifle company or a battalion. So the messaging goes and all these people get collected and all these issues of welfare are discussed with them and their needs are sorted out. Now, similarly, people who are far away from the Northeast, they have, like I said, they have their own establishments. It's called as ARISA, Assam Rifle Ex-Servicemen. Um, for their welfare, there are offices established. They collect people come. And even in Nepal, 2 years back, in fact, when we introduced this Veterans Day for the first meeting in Nepal, close to 800 people came. And you'll be surprised to know all of them, all the women folk had designer saris. They designed saris of Assam Rifle color. Two colors of Assam Rifle on their saris. They're all wearing, all those 800 women wearing identical saris. So that's the kind of spirit that they have. Similarly, all the men stitched new jackets because for them it was a matter of great pride that they were getting
Yeah.
an opportunity to meet on a particular day, which was
Yeah.
recognized as a Veterans Day.
Wow, excellent, sir. I mean to say that's a wonderful initiative. And as you rightly mentioned earlier, the families also go through a lot of sacrifice, long separations, of course, high risk postings leading to a lot of stress at home and constant relocations. So, my question would be how did your family navigate all this in this 4 decades of your service?
It's not peculiar to my family. It's a given for every family when they
Yeah.
join. My wife is from totally a civilian background. She had absolutely no clue of what she's headed for, and only after, I had given her hints before marriage that there will be periods when we will not be. But she didn't understand the import of, like you said, going for 3, 4 days and you start missing your family. She
Yeah.
thought going out means maybe after 4, 5 days he'll come back.
Yeah.
The enormity is sunken when we had our first field posting. When I said now I'm gone for the next 2 years, I'll come only if and when I get leave. So first time it really hit her hard. But then we have a system where there are similarly placed families. They understand
Yeah.
each other very well. And then it is something that is taken as, okay, these are the hazards, for want of a better word, I'll say, occupational hazards. But what it also does is, and this I must tell people who stay throughout with families, that a little bit of separation actually adds more spice and makes your married life a lot happier. There is a certain time when there is a cooling off required both for the husband and wife. And thereafter, when you meet, your love only increases manifold. And
Increases,
again,
increases.
when the graph again drips or drops, that's when army sends you on the next field posting, which the people who are not in the army are not fortunate to enjoy this kind of a lifestyle.
I've still got a few questions more on the rapid fire kind. Reading, I can see a lot of books behind you, and I see that you do read a lot. One book that you feel that every leader should read, or anybody aspiring to be a leader?
There were many books, but there's a book which I've just read, Mustafa Suleiman, of The Coming Age of AI. I think
Yeah.
this is a book that you must read. It's very intriguing. I read it for the first time. Now I'm reading it for the second time again. And I realized what a fabulous book it is because it is the future as we see it. And it's not just about AI, drawn inferences from history a lot, also of geography, before trying to situate the AI part of it. So this is, I think, one of the best books I've read.
I think what we are going to face in the next few years, I don't think we can even predict because every day is a new day with so much of development happening in the AI front. And I'm I think that is something that definitely, as you said, I will look at it. Second question is, after a high pressure day of decision making, of a lot of different stressful situations, how do you unwind?
My idea of unwinding is sitting in a room like this where I'm all by myself and I pick up one of these books and start reading books. If it's not that, then it is listening to music.
What kind of music do you like, sir?
Any music, but largely Hindi, old.
Old Hindi songs. Okay. And any hobby or skill you have that would surprise people who only known you as a military officer?
Well, it's because of long hours of listening to music. I like to sing also. I have my
Okay.
own karaoke system here. So
Okay.
mm, 2 to 3 times in a week, even now, even while I was the DG, I would do that.
Okay.
When suddenly too much of work, once I would spend 15-20 minutes singing, and then it gives you a good sleep also thereafter.
That
Your
is true.
nerves are absolutely at rest after that.
And any one quote that you live by or any saying?
Yeah, carpe diem, live the moment, seize the moment. Don't think too much about the future.
Okay. And any one place in India where you're posted that remains close to your heart?
Well, ideally it would be Shillong, where I retired as a director general and where I had a house which was, over 5 acres. But I would rather, because those are just in your imagination. You can never live in a property which is over 5 acres and a
Yeah.
huge house which looks more like a palace. Those are, I mean, those, while they are houses, but you can't have your soul attached to such houses. It is rather, you'll always love to be in a smaller house where you are, as a family, you can shout at people,
Yes.
your
Yes.
wife, your kids. So by that logic, there's a place called Faizabad where I commanded my battalion, which is now called as Ayodhya.
Yeah.
And what I liked the most was, while it was a very small station, poor electricity, poor roads, everything was poor. What was good about that was my battalion and my officers. We were all like a family. We would meet almost every single day. Every second, third day, we would meet and sit around and have a great time. Now, all of this doesn't happen these days because of internet, your mobile, all of this. This is something that I dearly miss. Those moments where you had nothing but fun, play games, antakshari, cards. I mean, so many things.
Yeah.
Dumb charade. There's so many games, party games. All of those don't happen anymore.
Thank you. Thank you. Sir, last two questions. These are not rapid fire, but something that I would want our listeners to kind of pick up from. For all the youngsters who are listening, in the age group of, I would say, even teenagers to up to 30s or 40s, what would you like to tell them about, say, service, sacrifice, and finding purpose in their work?
Service, as in the military, or
Or it
service
could
that.
be, no, just work every day, somebody working in the IT industry or,
Okay.
anywhere.
My advice given, and I'll give an example of engineers. See, it is estimated that most of the engineers don't eventually become engineers after doing their engineering degrees. Of course, doctors have no choice; they become doctors. So, and I think people who become doctors have this set in their heart long before
Yeah.
they actually enter the medical profession, that this is what I want to become. Whereas that is not the case with the engineers. This is again my reading. It's more out of parental pressure, and many times the parents insist, if not a doctor, an engineer, or of course now we have the software, IT,
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah.
options.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a person should ask, where does his heart lie? Where
Uh-huh.
does he have the passion? What does he have the passion for? It may not be well paying enough, but if your passion can become your profession, no matter what that is, I think that's where you'll be the happiest. That is why most of these engineers keep changing jobs, one job to the other, and none of that they've learned during their engineering college days. Kids, the younger generation, at least in their formative years, have to decide. And just in case you're not able to decide for whatever reason, you may be confused, because everyone is not mature enough. Everyone doesn't have that kind of an ecosystem where he can make those conscious decisions given the domestic circumstances that he may be facing. So then in that case, just go with the flow, whatever comes your way. Thereafter, it's always better in an early stage of your life, maybe early 20s, or could even be late 20s, by which time you have to firm in as to what is it that you want to become. And thereafter, make it your passion. So that would be a service, whatever you choose. If it happens to be forces, and if you're able to get into it, well, good enough. It could be like your profession, very noble profession, doctors, or a teacher's profession. A teacher's profession, unfortunately, is not very well paid in our country, but I think we need to work on that. The country needs to work on that also. The second part was after service was,
No,
what is it?
about the sacrifice and finding purpose in work.
Yeah, there is a lot of satisfaction that you get when you indulge in sacrifices. It could, at the age of the youngsters, it could be a sacrifice that you make for your sibling. But as you move up in the hierarchy, no matter which profession you are, I gave you some kind of an example of where I felt that that soldier deserved that award.
Yes. Yes.
If I had it would have given me a great degree of career progression to be called as a gallantry award winner. It would have also given me income tax benefits now. After retirement, if you're a gallantry award winner, then there's no income tax.
Uh-huh.
So but then it's the bigger call that you have to take at times. And believe me, at whatever stage, when you make a sacrifice, the kind of satisfaction that you get, no money can buy that. That is something that I would like to tell your viewers.
And I think sacrifice not only, as you said, building your own character. So whatever sacrifices that you have to do on the way, it could be giving up a bad habit or ensuring that you're there for your family, as you rightly mentioned
Yes,
about
yes.
your parents. I think those sacrifices are what you're talking about. So that's one thing. And finally, finding purpose in work, because many people feel a little disillusioned probably when they start working and they realize that that is not their cup of tea. So how does somebody find purpose?
So that's exactly what I was saying. If you're able to make your passion your profession, and it is necessary for
Yes.
you to identify what your passion is, then you will find the purpose also. It's an extension of that.
So the final question, sir, I'm not going to hold you back for any more longer. It's a question which some of our guests have kind of not preferred to answer because it's a strong question about legacy. Legacy that you hope to leave, not in just terms of the operations and achievements that you have led and had, but also in terms of values and principles you stood for.
Okay, Dr. Murli, as we speak, I suddenly noticed in the background, do you see that building?
Yes, yes.
And what
Is
is
that
written below you? That is the
yeah?
Indian Military Academy.
Okay.
That is the building of the Indian Military Academy. And rather than legacy, I would rather tell you what is it that I believe in. And there, what I learned, that motto which you see written there,
Yeah.
and it says, the safety, honor, and welfare of your country come first, always and every time. The honor, welfare, and comfort of your men you command
Yeah.
comes next. Your own comfort, ease, and safety come last and every time. I think that is on that, and this is something that I've been following to the T right from my IMA days, and it's never let me down. And I think whatever I have achieved, it has got largely to do with that inscription which is there.
Thank you, sir. In fact, I would have definitely asked you as a last question, what does that building signify? Because it is on your wall, but you rightly mentioned it as a part of the previous question. Sir, thank you very much. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I didn't feel like I was talking to one of the highest rank army officers. It felt like I was talking to somebody close to me, more like a family.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Through the conversation, I made you my relative.
Thank you. So as we conclude, what stands out is not just the depth of your experience, but the clarity, the humility with which you shared whatever even smallest experience, from your childhood influences to leading men in the most fragile of terrains, of how you spoke about the Siachen area, how you ensured that there were no casualties in your team, from your childhood influences to, again, the leadership in very powerful positions. It's about responsibility, resilience, and of course, finally, the human connection. You've spoken wonderfully about everything. So, sir, thank you deeply for not just your
Thank you,
time, but for your service, for your candor, and for leaving us with lessons that go far beyond the uniform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Murli. Honored to be here on this podcast with you.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank you.
look forward to interacting with you more in the future.
Thank you, Jai Hind. And to all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this podcast and the conversation that I had with Lieutenant General Nair. It has given us perspective and inspiration, and I'm sure you share the same feeling that I do. Until next time, as we say on our podcast, keep seeking wisdom, keep building courage, and in the light of this conversation, keep lighting the path ahead. Thank you very much. Till the next episode, goodbye. Thank you.